Welcome to Women Lead, a production of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute. We are your host. I'm Bernadette Norris Weeks.
I'm Kathy Eggleston.
And I am Michelle Austin Pammies. Today, we'll be speaking to Vanessa Joseph, a very well-known attorney here in South Florida who has a focus on immigration and who is the Director of Strategic Communication for Catholic Legal Services. She's also the elected City Clerk for the City of North Miami.
Politicians are constantly talking about immigration these days. It is a divisive political issue. It's a wedge issue, in fact.
It is a wedge issue, and it's unfortunate.
It is, because every day you're listening on the radio or you're watching TV, you keep hearing about the southern border.
Making references to linking immigrants with violence and crime.
Right. Also, just basically that they're invading a lot of negativity around the
But
issue.
worse than that, poisoning the blood.
Yeah, I mean, the rhetoric has gotten so hostile, and as someone who is not professionally involved in the legal system as you two are, for me as an average American, it's a black box to me. We know that the system is not working. We can see it with our eyes, but why? They're not talking about that. It's almost as though the politicians don't have an incentive to fix the problem. I wonder why.
I wonder why, but
As an immigrant myself, I think it's kind of insulting to think of immigrants as not contributing to this society. I feel like I'm doing it every day. So I need to hear more about who is contributing and what are they contributing, and does the country need its immigrants, since we're supposed to be a nation of immigrants?
Well, we know that the country needs its immigrants because we have a worker shortage here in not only our county, but throughout the nation. And so we're talking about how to get more people here, but on the other hand, you hear politicians talking about how to keep people out. What's the real deal?
Well, this is so important to our communities. Our communities of color seem to be targeted once again. And luckily, we have some terrific expertise that is going to help us peel back the layers of what's really going on.
And we'll be speaking to Vanessa Joseph, an immigration attorney who's an expert in the field, who can bring light to all of these immigration issues we're concerned about.
We'll be right back after these messages. At the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, our mission is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. We do this in a variety of different ways, including but not limited to providing mentorship opportunities for young professionals where we assist in helping to create paths to leadership. We empower women to develop capacities for social change. We produce programs that promote heritage awareness, and we provide training opportunities for business and government. Our institute holds seminars focused on professional success techniques, and we host many other events such as our popular Advocates for Change and Leaders Connect. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute publishes a magazine called Women Lead. Our signature event is the Women of Color Empowerment Conference, a yearly conference where hundreds of leaders gather from all across the United States and beyond. To learn more about membership and how you can support our programs or be a sponsor of the Women Lead TV, visit us at nationalwomenofcolor.com. Again, that's nationalwomenofcolor.com.
The law office of Austin Pammies Norris Weeks Powell is a full-service law firm practicing in the area of governmental law, including the representation of municipalities, civil litigation, personal injury, real estate, and corporate transactional matters. With over 100 years of collective experience, our attorneys are admitted to practice before state courts, federal courts, and the United States Supreme Court. We are conveniently located in downtown Fort Lauderdale and can be reached at 954-768-9770. Or for more information about the law firm of Austin Pammies Norris Weeks Powell, visit our website at apnwlaw.com. That's apnwlaw.com.
Welcome back to Women Lead. Our guest today is Vanessa Joseph. She's the Director of Strategic Communications for Catholic Legal Services. Now, Vanessa is a powerhouse immigration attorney here in South Florida, and she's going to tell us all about the immigration issues that matter most to us. Welcome to Women Lead, Vanessa.
Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
So Vanessa, we'll start by the basics. Catholic Legal Services, what is it that you're providing as a service to the immigrant community?
Catholic Legal Services was founded to provide immigration services, direct legal representation to the most vulnerable in our community. So individuals who could not afford the services of a private attorney to accompany them through their migration journey. And we do the entire gamut of family-based and removal defense. So whether it's helping you petition for someone back home, helping you to leave detention, request a bond, request a parole, defend you in immigration proceedings in court, we do it all.
Great.
Wow. Well, I want to jump right into the issue of national conversation and concern. Our southern border, the United States and Mexico, we see the pictures. We know that something is not working, but especially for me as a layperson, it's a black box to me. Tell us what is going on at the border and give us your perspective on what should be addressed.
It's interesting that you say it's a black box for you, because even as a practitioner myself, for some of us, it's actually a black box to us as well. Because what we're seeing at the border, we're seeing these pictures, we're seeing the droves of people who are seeking to enter the United States, but that doesn't really paint a clear image of what is supposed to happen at the border. You know, there's supposed to be processing of individuals at the border. In immigration law, you're told, actually, one of the first things you're taught is that in order to seek asylum, to seek refuge in the United States, you actually have to set foot onto the United States. So how do you do that, right? You can either maybe take a boat, or you can enter through a port of entry, which is what you're legally required to do to request asylum. So what is happening is people are fleeing their home countries, coming through the southern border, but are not being processed in the ways that they should. And so you're seeing an accumulation of people who are at the border, but we're not being told that some of them are not processed under the terms of which they should be processed. They're not given opportunities to articulate their claim for asylum. They're not being given opportunities to even have what we call a credible fear interview to assess whether that individual would be able to proceed with an asylum claim. And what we're seeing, the pictures are things that really call to our emotional, it pulls on us emotionally. But what we're not realizing is that there are people who are strategically sending a message out that the border is open. They're sending messaging out that's forcing people to come up through the border without actually telling them what they're going to see once they arrive.
Well, speaking of the southern border, what I'm wondering is, where are people coming from? Are they coming from the southern border, or are you seeing here, particularly in the South Florida area, that folks are coming from other places? Tell us about the immigration journey that folks are taking in the most part.
So, obvious reasons, you would see people come in through the southern border, through a plane, right? It may be people who overstayed their visas, and then you would see people take a boat or some kind of a maritime arrival, somebody who took to the seas, risked their life on the seas to arrive here. What's happening, and what we're seeing a lot of, especially with Haitian migrants, is that they're not being afforded the opportunity to even touch on land. They're being intercepted at sea, interdicted, and sent right back to where they came from. So most of the arrivals that you're going to see are usually going to come in through the southern border. Now, individuals who receive a parole or a travel authorization under the humanitarian parole program that's out here now, you're seeing a lot more people come in by plane. And so that's the way that you're seeing a lot of people migrate here, but the southern border still remains one of the easiest ports of entry for people to come in through, and because of where they're coming from, right? So nobody's going to go up to Canada to come down that way. It's mostly going to be through the southern border because of how you're able to access entry into any of those countries within South America. So that's why you see a lot more people coming through the southern border versus maybe any other way, especially if they don't have authorization for travel through something like a humanitarian parole program, which they probably would have had from their home country and maybe taken a plane to arrive here.
For some reason, when we hear about the immigrants coming, they are always darker skinned immigrants, right? So we're talking about the fear of immigrants has to do with black immigrants coming, Latinos, Mexican, and other people from Latin America. Is that really the bulk of the immigration in this country? And also, are all the different categories of immigrants treated similarly?
I think that you're seeing a lot more of folks of fair skin enter the country as a result of what we know is happening around the world, right? So especially with Ukraine, what took place, I think over the last couple of years, you've seen more folks from that side of the world come into the country. But historically, you have seen a lot more black and brown immigrants migrate to the country. And especially if we're thinking about geopolitically, what is happening, what is the US doing, how it's operating in other countries, you start to see patterns of migration shift based on what is happening around the globe and what is happening vis-a-vis US foreign policy in a lot of these countries. You and I are both of Haitian descent. You're from Haiti, and I am of Haitian descent, and I know for sure that the US has a lot to do with why people are deciding to immigrate here. What people often forget is that people don't necessarily always want to leave their home. Sell everything that they have, if they have anything, and risk the journey to come here. There has to be something, the push and pull, right? The migration, the root causes of migration are not such that we just want to leave here and go here. We tend to go to the countries where we have some familiarity. If it's not family in the country or language, it's often that the country that I am coming to has had a lot of dealings in the country that I am coming from. And that's what pushes a lot of folks that look like us to come over here. Because you told us that you were here to save us back home. So now we're coming here for the same refuge that you said, for the way of life that you told us we should be living back home. And so when you have all of these issues, I think Haiti's a great example with the US's involvement in Haiti over the years. This is a natural place for people to come to. And especially because South Florida has a huge Haitian community. So you're seeing a lot of our folks, black people, black migrants, not just from Haiti, but you're also seeing a lot of folks from Latin American, South American, Central American countries come here as well.
At the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, our mission is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. We do this in a variety of different ways, including but not limited to providing mentorship opportunities for young professionals where we assist in helping to create paths to leadership. We empower women to develop capacities for social change. We produce programs that promote heritage awareness, and we provide training opportunities for business and government. Our institute holds seminars focused on professional success techniques, and we host many other events such as our popular Advocates for Change and Leaders Connect. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute publishes a magazine called Women Lead. Our signature event is the Women of Color Empowerment Conference, a yearly conference where hundreds of leaders gather from all across the United States and beyond. To learn more about membership and how you can support our programs or be a sponsor of the Women Lead TV, visit us at nationalwomenofcolor.com. Again, that's nationalwomenofcolor.com.
So it's basically that, like, colonized countries the people tend to go back to where the colonizers were, right? People, where there had been a U.S. occupation of the country, then these people tend to flee to the U.S. Where there had been some other, like, I know that, for example, in Jamaica, they go to Britain a lot.
Exactly.
Even though they come to the U.S. as
Same
well.
thing in France, right?
Yes.
You still get that, people migrating to countries that colonize them. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Well, I've got to ask you this, and we hear so much in this climate that we're in right now, which is so politically charged, about immigrants who are committing crimes coming to this country. Can you speak to that and tell us whether there's a disproportionate number of immigrants that are actually committing crimes?
There's always this narrative of immigrants are here committing crimes and they're doing all these bad acts, and yet the data does not show that there is a disproportionate number of folks from other countries, immigrants, actually committing crimes compared to U.S. citizens or folks who are from the U.S. And so it's one of those narratives that's always shared, and one, if by chance something happens with an immigrant, They take that story and magnify it, and it continues to perpetuate this idea that in fact immigrants are causing chaos and committing all these crimes, as if people from this soil do not commit crimes as well. And so the narrative is always shifted to this immigrant did this versus a person committed this crime. Anybody can commit crimes, but it's really a figment of the imagination when people say that immigrants are committing crimes at higher numbers. There's no data to prove that, no data to prove that incarcerations are up for immigrants as compared to US citizens.
Well, I mean, by definition, immigration is an international issue, and you mentioned that sometimes with our own policies, every country gets to have their own policies and processes regarding immigration, but maybe sometimes we're not following our own policies. Are there any international standards? Is there a conversation about how immigration should be working?
So when we think about the international standards and the treaties and agreements that we've signed on to, we've said, right, we were part of these conventions that have said that we would provide refuge if somebody comes from another country is seeking refuge based on the categories for which they grant asylum. We'll take that person in, we'll give them refuge. To make it simple, right? I don't want to get technical, but to make it simple, if someone comes to the United States saying that they're fleeing their home, they need asylum, and they fit the criteria, they can make a colorable claim. All they have to show really is that there's like a 10% chance that this could happen to me. Like if we're really like looking at what the black letter of the law says, it's just, that this could happen, right? The standard that people are held to in practice is far higher than that. It should not be so difficult for people to get asylum. But oftentimes what happens is that you have judges or adjudicators who have these preconceived notions about the people who are before them. So to go back to a question you asked earlier as to whether people are treated fairly based on where they come from, absolutely not. Because people have these notions of who we are and what we're coming here for. Historically, you've seen how Cubans and Haitians are often treated differently when actually the root causes are quite similar. But Haitians are often treated as economic migrants. And it's said that Cubans are feeling political persecution, but is what we're dealing with back home not a political issue. We're not economic migrants. But the narratives are shifted so that you can make the argument that this group of people is different from this group of people. And what often happens is that societies, the communities in which we settle into, start to treat us differently too, start to look at us differently, and we accept these divisions that are placed on us to further divide us. And that's why advocacy almost never looks the same for Black migrants.
Well, one thing's for sure is that the economic refugee versus political refugee debate is invalid. Because if you're leaving Cuba and you say you're leaving for political reasons because it's a communist country, but you're also leaving because food is hard to come by, and so is medicine. You could say that that's as a result of the communist regime, but it is an economic impact on you and your standard of living, which is driving a lot of people to come in. And similarly in Haiti, if a Haitian person is having a hard time feeding his family, doesn't it have to do with the fact that there's a political disaster in which there's no governance and gangs are taking to the streets and the people can't work or get to work? All of these things are linked. You can't separate economics from politics.
You're
That's for
right.
sure.
And I'm going to shift gears with you for just a moment and talk about, in our intro for the show, we talked a little bit about workers and the need for workers here and how that, and I'm associated with a prominent Chamber of Commerce. And so I'm wondering, how do you all navigate those issues within your workspace, and is it easier for people to come here if they're coming here for work? How is that working out?
So there is this idea that it's easier to come here if you're seeking work. And what we also forget is that even in that space, right, the business immigration space, let's say, there's still divisions, right? So certain countries still receive favor depending on the industries that they're coming into, and certain industries are maybe people think more naturally of, right? So earlier we were talking about IT. And folks from India tend to really occupy those spaces. You know, the last year in August, we held at Catholic Legal Services an Opportunity Summit. And the idea, the vision behind the Opportunity Summit was, I was coming from a meeting at the county, and I saw that they had vacancies, and it was for bus drivers. And I mean, and I had been seeing for a while that they had vacancies, but this time I saw that they were giving a $5,000 signing bonus to be a bus driver, and the salaries are pretty decent. So I called my boss immediately and I said, look, I might become a bus driver. And I can't even lie to you, I just got to memorize routes, and I just need a break from the law. You know how it is. And he laughed at me, and he said, imagine how great that would be for our clients. And I said, exactly. I said, this is exactly why I called you. I said, we have to figure out a way to get folks who are recent arrivals, people who are coming into this country who would like to work, because nobody wants to depend on anyone else for anything, which the narrative on that is flawed as well. And we need to figure out a way to streamline so that when people come to this country, let's get them a work permit and let's get them into a job. And if we have to, upskill them or train them in between, how do we streamline that process? And that was the vision behind the Opportunity Summit. So we spent months figuring out who should we bring to the table. We ended up bringing the Archdiocese of Miami as a faith-based partner, Miami-Dade County as our government public sector arm, and then we brought the Beacon Council to the table to have a conversation about who are the players that need to be in this space. Let's understand what the issues are. Let's get people together so that we can get them into jobs. We're generally in South Florida, especially in Miami-Dade County, a welcoming county. So we don't want people to feel out of place. We don't have this image of a crisis in the way that has been said in New York. Instead, let's figure out how to get folks into jobs that are vacant. And that was the first. We're going to continue. We're going to have a second, attach a job fair to it, because there are still so many vacancies and still so many places where we can put folks to work. We often forget that a lot of people who are coming, especially now, have the educational background, the technical background to do a lot of the things that we need done to run our communities, to run our counties, our cities, and even jobs across our state. And so we have to give people an opportunity to get into those positions. Construction, development is booming everywhere. There's a construction site within 5 minutes of wherever you are. They need folks. You go into stores, they need folks. Farm workers, restaurants, hotels, but even beyond the service industry, they're looking for nurses. Mm-hmm. We need teachers. The teachers are quitting. There are so many places where you need people, and there are people who want to work.
At the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, our mission is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. We do this in a variety of different ways, including but not limited to providing mentorship opportunities for young professionals, where we assist in helping to create paths to leadership. We empower women to develop capacities for social change. We produce programs that promote heritage awareness, and we provide training opportunities for business and government. Our institute holds seminars focused on professional success techniques, and we host many other events such as our popular Advocates for Change and Leaders Connect. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute publishes a magazine called Women Lead. Our signature event is the Women of Color Empowerment Conference, a yearly conference where hundreds of leaders gather from all across the United States and beyond. To learn more about membership and how you can support our programs or be a sponsor of the Women Lead TV, visit us at nationalwomenofcolor.com. Again, that's nationalwomenofcolor.com.
The law office of Austin, Pammies, Norris, Weeks, Powell is a full-service law firm practicing in the area of governmental law, including the representation of municipalities, civil litigation, personal injury, real estate, and corporate transactional matters. With over 100 years of collective experience, our attorneys are admitted to practice before state courts, federal courts, and the United States Supreme Court. We are conveniently located in downtown Fort Lauderdale and can be reached at 954-768-9770. Or for more information about the law firm of Austin, Pammies, Norris, Weeks, Powell, visit our website at apnwlaw.com. That's apnwlaw.com.
So Vanessa, the issue is, do these immigrants who are here in South Florida right now have work permits?
So depending on how you entered the country and maybe what benefit that you've applied for, you can have access to a work permit. So if folks are completely undocumented, it may be difficult for them to have the ability to secure a work permit. For folks who are interested in doing something on the issue, this is a huge point of advocacy. Folks who are coming in, let's streamline the process to get them access to a work permit. Allow them the opportunity to get a work permit, get themselves employed, and be able to sustain not only themselves, but their families and also their communities.
This is good for the community, not just for the individual who has a job. Because I think people are getting underpaid. If it's not like they're not working.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of them are working somewhere, right? And they're working somewhere at less than minimum wage or just barely making it because they're undocumented. So we need to get that cleared up. That's a definite.
100%.
Well, I have learned so much during this conversation about immigration from someone who touches people, wonderful people who are so important to our community every day. We have been talking with Vanessa Joseph, Director of Strategic Communications for Catholic Legal Services. And don't forget, go to nationalwomenofcolor.com to see more about our other programs and shows upcoming.
And our conference.
And until the next time, be empowered.